connecting the understanding of forest therapy here with SDGs, good health and well-being. Can we have the next slide? So what it is, Forest Therapy India offers a combination of therapeutic leisurely walks on gentle paths under the forest canopy, or even urban gardens and parks with guided activities. So what it is just simply immersing yourselves in nature, awakening our five senses. So today we are hardly using all of our senses, and we are usually, in front of screens. We have longer screen times, laptops, television, mobiles, and in that process, there's an overload of information, but many of our senses are not being used. We are concentrating on other, maybe just one or two of our senses. So awakening our senses is a mindful activity that we do in on our walks. Grounding and earthing, I'll explain these further later. Qigong meditation is which I've incorporated. It is a form of meditation and movement and deep breathing exercises. All of this in nature, and there are various benefits to it. So forest therapy and SDGN, it's a reconnecting people with nature, and it's a natural way of well-being to help cope with mental health through nature therapy. The next slide, please.
Just a second. Just 1 minute. Yep. This is the one, isn't it?
Yeah, so we'll come to the history of what it is and how it started. So it is a basically Japanese concept. It's called Shinrin Yoku. It started in the 1980s, which was a way to get the people working in offices, to take a break and to, go into nature to, rejuvenate. So later in the 1980s, various experiments were taken. First, it started as a leisure activity. Later, the Forest Department and the Ministry of Forest and Agriculture, they got into it and ran various scientific researches. And they realized that Shinrin Yoku, which literally means forest bathing in Japanese, had various benefits to it. So Shinrin Yoku translates as forest bathing, and forest therapy, they realized, created a calming neuropsychological effect in the neurosystem of people every time they spent quality time in nature. Next slide, please. So what came out of all the research that they did on various people? It said that it reduced depression. It helped people coping with anxiety. People slept better. It reduced fatigue. The blood pressure was stable. The stress hormone, cortisol, that was reduced. People developed a deeper and clearer intuition. And there was an increased flow of energy. Hence, overall happiness increased, and creativity. There was a boost of the immune system as well. Next slide, please. So I've just driven a few case studies, what they had done, just to give a better, clearer idea of what it was. Firstly, a comparative study of physiological and psychological effects of forest bathing, Shinrin Yoku, was done on working people with and without depressive tendencies. This was done by Akemi from the Biomedical and Health Science in Hiroshima University. So a comparative study of this effects of forest bathing showed that the physiological measurements and psychological service before and after forest bathing, of people who participated in it, and they then excluded the severely depressed individuals. The participants were classified into two groups then, those with depressive tendencies and those without depressive tendencies, for a comparative study. Next slide. So in that evaluation, they studied the blood pressure. So mainly these studies are done by taking the saliva samples, urine samples of people before they get into a natural environment, and post that, again, those tests were taken. So the blood pressure, the pulse rate, the autonomic functions, and profile of mood states. POMS is basically, they see the various They have a list of emotional feelings listed out, and they see how they feel in all those criteria are ticked off before and after the walks. So of the 155 participants, 37% had depressive tendencies. All participants showed significant decrease in the blood. SBP and DBP are the various blood pressure types, and in negative POMS items after forest bathing sessions. So things which were negative started to become better after a forest walk session. Before, before, before the items before these sessions, those with depressive tendencies scored significantly higher on POMS negative items, and those without depressive tendencies after forest bathing, those with depressive tendencies, many of them no longer differed between those with and without depressive tendencies. So people with depressive tendencies, the entire evaluation showed that after the walk, they were a close match to people who had no depressive tendencies, hence proving that after this session of forest bathing, their mood was enhanced and the depressive tendencies had improved. Next slide, please. This was one study. There was another study in which Dr. King Lee, he's a professor of Nippon Medical and founder of president of Society of Forest Medicine in Japan itself. And he took 12 Japanese adult male experienced a 3-day, 2-night trip in a forest. Again, blood as well as urine samples were measured for natural killer activity. So NK cells are cells which fight various tumors and cancers. It's a form of white blood cell in our body. So again, they had done samples of NK cells were taken. The members of NK cells, the numbers of NK cells after this did the testing on a 2-day trip, the samples were taken after 2 days, 3 days, and 7 days, and it showed the same measurements were made before the trips on a normal day as a control. So what they did was they took people into a natural environment for a 3-night, 2-day trip, and also people stayed in the urban city, and they did the same test on them to see how the NK cells, the white blood cells, how they were performing. The next slide, please. So to get an understanding of how the NK cells were performing better for people in the natural environment was that there is a chemical which is released out of these trees. It's called phytoncides. So whenever you're in a forest environment, where there are a lot of trees, when the trees are under attack, whether it's fungus or there are animals or something eating its leaves or roots, as a defense mechanism, a tree releases a form of chemical called phytoncides. And people who dwell in the forest or in a natural environment, we breathe in this phytoncides, and it was shown that phytoncides was actually helping the natural killer cells. So trees release these antimicrobial essential oils into the air, and when we breathe this while walking in a forest, has beneficial effects on human. And what is that? Next slide, please. These cells support the immune system. It boosts immunity and is linked to a low case of cancer, as well as fighting infections and inflammations. Every time we breathe in phytoncide, studies show that the increase in white blood cells help fight virus infected cells. So what happens is, breathing in this, it was shown that because of the phytoncides, the white blood cells were being more activated. So hence helping people boost the immunity, also fight various viruses and inflammations in the body. Next slide, please. So Dr. King, professor of the Nippon Medical founding member and president of the Society of Forest Medicine in Japan, he declared the results showed that the NK, the natural killer cells activity, and the numbers of the natural killer cells, as well as number of various other enzymes after doing AB expressing cells, was significantly higher in the forest bathing samples compared to normal working day samples. In addition, increased NK activity lasted more than 30 days after the trip. So this, after the evaluation, the the people who had gone to the forest, their samples were collected on the 7th day as well as after 30 days. And it showed that, even after 30 days, the NK cells were doing well and were activated as compared to the people who were in an urban environment and not in a forest environment. That proved that even if people or humans, came in contact with a natural environment, and the benefits lasted for more than 30 days. Next slide, please. Similar study was done by E.O. Wilson. He's an American scientist, the biophilia hypothesis, and it suggests that humans possess an innate tendency to seek connection with nature and other forms of life. The biophilic experience can reduce stress, improve cognitive function, and enhance mood and creativity. These other outcomes can increase health and well-being as well as productivity. There are many corporates today who are encouraging people to step out into nature just because the productivity of their team, seems to be enhanced every time they take a break rather than working back to back, without any break in between. So to take a break from the daily routine and most importantly, to step out into a natural environment. The American scientist E.O. Wilson also said that, nature is in our DNA. We are natural beings, and that is why we are drawn towards nature. If I were to show you a beautiful scenery, a poster, a painting of beautiful scenery, a beach or the mountains, and opposed to a concrete jungle, a big city, you will be drawn towards, the natural painting. It is in our DNA to be drawn towards nature. And it was E.O. Wilson who had always laid stress. Even he's written a book, Biophilia. So it showed that as humans, we are drawn towards nature. And I guess forest therapy's whole aim is to connect people back to nature. When we understand the benefits of being in nature, how it helps us, we will value that, the benefits of forest therapy, we will value it, and we will preserve it much better, and we'll be more aware about it. Next slide, please. Forest therapy is a sensory experience. It's not just a walk or a hike. When we are there out in forest bathing, we try to awaken our senses and be present in the moment. So what is happening is people are, always on the go. They're always rushed. They are so busy that they have a lot of things going on in their minds, a lot of things. And it's so important to sometimes just slow down, to stop things and slow down. When there's a lot happening, the best way to do it is just to slow down, focus on what is happening, take one thing at a time. And the best way to do it is to awaken our senses firstly. So listening to the sounds around you, the twittering of birds, the rustling of leaves or the streams, the water, the sound of water, and take deep breaths, soak in the sights of textured grounds and shapes of leaves. These are all parts of forest therapy in which we just be there. We are there at the moment, we're taking in all the different sights, sounds, smells, and touching the different textures. And we just let the stillness around influence our state of mind and make us forget the constant motion of the city. So that's a key concept of forest therapy, is to simply slow down. This can also be done, the simple thing of mindfulness can also be done when we are in the urban city as well. If you take a break when we are being anxious, or we need to, rethink things. If you take a break to a local park, just sit there, engaging our five senses, just slowing our brain down, taking deep breaths, and just being present at the moments. Suddenly we have more clarity, our creativity is enhanced, and just because we are engaging all the senses rather than, being in a closed environment and getting anxious. So what happens is when we enhance this sensory experience using our five senses, our body understands how we can respond to the situation, not react. So it's easy to react to situation, but when we are grounded, when we are mindful, when we are connected to earth, then at that moment, we give out better responses to any scenario, no matter how we feel, rather than just reacting and getting bad results out of that. Next slide, please. So forest therapy promotes healthy lifestyles. It's a preventive measure because we feel people who dwell in forest therapy, it's a way of well-being. It reduces the mortality from non-communicable disease and promotes mental health, of course. It ensures healthy lives and promotes well-being for all ages. Everyone of all age can do it. And I've connected it to the global goal for sustainable development. To ensure healthy lives and well-being for all, we all have to take action and get inspired here. Next slide, please. So mindfulness is one thing we practice at forest therapy. So feeling, when we are doing things out in nature, to activate our sense of feel by touching things around us. Sound, by listening and concentrating on the different sounds. You will be amazed when you just close your eyes and listen to the sounds in nature. There are so many that we just cross by and we don't even realize them. But if you're mindful and you're listening, you can listen to a whole plethora of beautiful sounds of nature. Take in the aromas and smells of earth, of the mud, uh, the microbes, all of it around, and of course the phytoncides. Deep breathing in a natural environment has its own benefits, and the sight, of course, all of us would agree that the beautiful sight of nature is always very therapeutic and healing. The ability to be fully present in the moment can have numerous benefits, everything from decreased stress, sadness, to increased levels of focus and happiness. Next slide, please. Grounding is a concept which more research is being conducting on it, but people have, the studies so far have shown quite a bit of positive results. So grounding basically is getting in touch with earth, with our bodies. There's a concept of tree hugging, which many people would find it silly, like why would someone hug a tree? But it is, the earth has a lot of free radicals, and then when we get them into our body, whether it's by sitting on earth, being barefoot on earth, or touching or taking a swim on a river or a pond, it realigns our electrical energy. We're reconnecting to the earth. To explain this more, next slide, please. So these electrons, so the body, our bodies, when we are working in an urban setting with our laptops, computers, and all the artificial lights, our bodies are getting positively charged. The electrons which are available on Earth, so when we absorb them, when grounding, it neutralizes the free radical damage and inflammation and restores a healthy endocrine function, improves the cellular uptake of nutrients, oxygen, and hormones while maximizing the removal of cellular waste, and the list goes on. So what happens is the earth is charged with negative ions, and our body is charged, when we are not in touch with the earth, our bodies have been charged with positive ions. More so, ever since we've left being barefoot, ever since the invention of shoes or artificial, the synthetic soles, we have very less contact with the earth. So what happens is when we have no contact with the earth, so our bodies are getting positively charged all the time. And this leads to inflammation and chronic pain. And once we get in touch, because before, when we were farming and when we were in constant touch with the earth, so we didn't have the issue of being positively charged. So there was a balance. We were getting the ions from the earth itself. Many times you might have seen an animal, maybe a dog, roll itself in mud or roll itself in grass. It is their own instinct to get the ions. When they are positively charged, that is their way negative ions from earth. So similarly, if as humans, we get in touch with earth, whether it's barefoot walking on earth, whether it's swimming in a natural environment, or, gardening, even gardening, we just simply touching earth, it gets the negative ions get in contact with us and immediately we are charged. Next slide. So grounding over, there was a study done.
It's a very interesting presentation, but we have many others also. Can you please summarize very quickly? Yeah.
Yes. Okay, sure. Okay, so we have, so the various benefits of grounding, the proven benefits are it helps in inflammation, sleep, pain and stiffness, circulation, blood pressure, and various others that listed on the slide. Next slide, please. So there are various studies. We can go to the next slide and skip the case study. Let's go to the next slide. Next slide, please. So another nature deficit disorder is one disorder which has happened today, where children are less in contact with nature. And the whole idea is that human beings, especially children, who are spending less time outdoors, and the belief that this change results in a wide range of behavior problem. They have more anxiety issues, disorders is not recognized in any of the medical manuals for mental disorders, but investigations and the relationships of children and natural world claim that cause for nature deficit disorder include parental fears, restricted access to natural areas. So it's important that children can get. Next slide. So the loss of natural surrounding in a child's neighbor and city, many parks and nature reserves have restricted access. So people are not, they have signs of do not walk off, these trail signs. So if children are allowed to have a more open area where they can access nature, there are various benefits to that as well. Next slide, please. To promote health and well-being for all, there's a concept of sit spot. If everyone could take time out in nature and spend time in develop a sit spot where, it helps cultivate present moment awareness, a quieter mind, observe the flow of reality occurring around you. So finding a sit spot is beneficial. Next slide, please. So basically the scientific research and results of forest bathing, it shows it reduces depression and anxieties. People sleep better. It reduces fatigue and blood pressure. Deeper and clearer intuition is developed. Overall increase of sense of happiness, increased creativity, boost your immune system, and reduce stress. So that is basically, I'll end it right here. So, so there are various components to it, things like grounding and all. There are a lot of case studies in which people have shown how inflammation in the body simply by walking barefoot has all, improved. So there are various benefits of forest therapy. And so that's about it from me. Thank you.